The Clever Mouse Deer and the Juicy Cucumber. A Malaysian tale. Once upon a time, in the lush green forests of Malaysia, lived a clever mouse deer named Kancil. Kancil was small, but his quick wit made up for his size. One hot afternoon, Kancil felt a rumbling in his tummy. He was terribly hungry. He spotted a farmer's field bursting with ripe, juicy cucumbers, a sight that made his mouth water. But the field was guarded by a grumpy crocodile. How could Kancil get his delicious treat? This is where our story begins. A story about outsmarting a bigger opponent with nothing but clever thinking. The crocodile, a giant named Buaya, was lazy but very protective of his cucumbers. Kancil knew he couldn't just waltz in and grab some. He needed a plan, so he devised a clever trick. He approached Buaya with a seemingly innocent question. "Buaya, Buaya, have you ever seen a more beautiful cucumber field?" Buaya, puffed up with pride over his guarding duties, puffed his chest and proudly showed Kancil around. Kancil feigned admiration, praising the cucumber's size and juiciness, subtly hinting at their deliciousness, while Buaya happily listened. Kancil's second move was even smarter. He casually mentioned that the king wanted to see the finest cucumbers for a special feast. Buaya, eager to impress the king and get rewarded, agreed to help Kancil gather the best ones. Kancil cleverly suggested a method of picking. Buaya would hold one end of a long vine, Kancil would hold the other, and they would pull together, collecting the cucumbers as they went. This was the clever part. While pretending to pull, Kancil slowly moved closer to the field's edge, accumulating cucumbers in his little basket. Buaya, believing he was also helping, pulled with all his might on the vines. When Kancil felt he had enough, he suddenly let go of the vine with a surprised yell. "Oh, the vine is breaking!" And with that, he quickly darted away, leaving a confused Buaya with a handful of vines and no cucumbers. Kancil, belly full of delicious cucumbers, scampered off into the forest, chuckling to himself. He hadn't used brute strength, he used his brains. The story of Kancil and the cucumber reminds us that intelligence and quick thinking can often help us overcome bigger challenges, even when we're small. So, next time you face a problem, remember Kancil and his clever plan. Maybe you can outsmart your own Buaya with a little bit of creative thinking. Kancil and the Flower Garden. A mischief maker's mishap Kancil, a clever mouse deer, was known throughout the jungle for his playful tricks. He loved a good prank, a bit of mischief. But sometimes, even the cleverest get caught in their own games. This is the story of Kancil and his visit to the beautiful flower garden. The garden belonged to the Raja, a large and proud tiger. It was bursting with vibrant colors: scarlet hibiscus, sunshine, yellow marigolds, and deep purple orchids. The Raja loved his garden more than anything, tending to it with meticulous care. He'd even put up a sign, "Keep out Raja's flowers." But Kancil, ever the daredevil, saw this not as a warning, but as a challenge. One sunny morning, Kancil couldn't resist. He sneaked past the sign, his little hooves padding softly on the earth. The flowers were breathtaking. He hopped amongst the blossoms, admiring their beauty. However, Kancil's admiration quickly turned to playful mischief. He started gently nibbling at the petals, thinking how delicious they might taste. One by one, he pilfered a petal here, a leaf there. His mischief grew. He started weaving tiny crowns of petals for himself, then knocking over the smaller plants for fun. He was having such a good time, completely forgetting the Raja's sign and the potential consequences. Then, a low growl rumbled through the air. The Raja! Kancil froze, his tiny heart pounding like a drum. The Raja, magnificent and furious, emerged from behind a giant hibiscus. He was not amused. Kancil, usually so quick-witted, was speechless. He could only tremble as the Raja stared down at him, surrounded by a scene of floral destruction. Instead of roaring, the Raja sighed. He explained gently, but firmly, that the flowers were precious and needed care, not careless play. Kancil, feeling truly ashamed, apologized profusely. He helped the Raja mend some of the damaged plants and promised never to disturb the garden again. From that day on, Kancil learned a valuable lesson. While his cleverness was a gift, it needed to be used responsibly. He still enjoyed his pranks, but he always made sure they didn't hurt anyone or damage something beautiful. The Raja's flower garden, once a target for mischief, became a reminder of the importance of respect and responsibility, even for the most playful of mouse deer. And that, my friends, is the story of Kancil and his encounter with the Raja's beautiful flowers. Kancil, the clever mouse deer, lived in a warm, sunny jungle. He loved the juicy fruits and the cool shade of the trees. One day, something extraordinary happened. Snow. A thick white blanket covered everything, turning the familiar jungle into a sparkling wonderland. Kancil, having never seen snow before, was both excited and puzzled. This unexpected winter presented a unique challenge: finding food. The usual juicy fruits were hidden under a thick layer of snow. The insects he loved to snack on had disappeared. Kancil, however, wasn't one to give up easily. He remembered the wise old tortoise, Tok Abba, who always had clever solutions. He scurried to Tok Abba's home, a sturdy hollow beneath a giant banyan tree. Tok Abba, seeing Kancil's bewildered expression, chuckled. "The snow is a beautiful surprise, but it hides our food," he said. "We need to think creatively." Together, they devised a plan. They would use their small size to their advantage. While larger animals struggled to find food, Kancil and Tokaba could burrow through the shallow snow to reach the plants beneath. They started digging, small paws and claws working tirelessly. Soon, they uncovered delicious roots and buried berries. Kancil, usually a bit selfish, generously shared his finds with Tokaba. He learned that even in tough times, working together and helping each other could lead to success. The snowy surprise, which initially seemed like a huge problem, became an adventure that strengthened their friendship. The snow eventually melted, revealing a refreshed jungle even more vibrant than before. Kancil had not only survived the unexpected winter, but had learned valuable lessons about resourcefulness, friendship, and the importance of sharing. He carried the memory of the snowy surprise, not as a hardship, but as a testament to his own cleverness and the power of cooperation. And, from then on, Kancil always kept a watchful eye on the sky, just in case another snowy surprise decided to visit his jungle home. The Clever Mouse Deer and the Flood. Once upon a time, in a lush green forest, lived a little mouse deer named Kancil. Kancil was small, but he was known throughout the forest for his quick wit and clever tricks. One day, the rain poured down relentlessly, turning the forest streams into raging rivers. The floodwaters rose rapidly, threatening to engulf the entire forest. All the animals panicked, scrambling for higher ground. This is where our story of Kancil and the flood begins. The first challenge Kancil faced was finding a safe place. Many animals, bigger and stronger than him, were already scrambling for the highest trees and hills. Kancil, being small, could easily squeeze into places others couldn't. He spotted a tall, sturdy tree, but a grumpy rhinoceros already occupied its lowest branch. Instead of arguing, Kancil cleverly suggested they share. He would climb higher while the rhino stayed below. The rhino, impressed by Kancil's politeness and respectful attitude, agreed. This demonstrates Kancil's problem-solving skills. He didn't fight, he found a solution. Next, the floodwaters kept rising. Even Kancil's chosen branch was threatened. Seeing a large floating log, Kancil didn't just jump on. He carefully secured himself with vines, making a makeshift raft. This shows Kancil's preparedness and resourcefulness. He didn't rely on luck. He actively sought safety. As days turned into nights, the flood continued. Other animals, exhausted and scared, were starting to lose hope. Kancil, however, used his time wisely. He gathered fruits and leaves from the trees before the flood reached them, ensuring he wouldn't starve. This act highlights Kancil's foresight and ability to plan ahead, a crucial survival skill. Finally, the rain stopped and the waters began to recede. Kancil, having survived the flood thanks to his cleverness, helped other animals down from the trees. He shared his food, proving his kindness and compassion. The whole forest celebrated Kancil's bravery and intelligence. Kancil's story reminds us that even when faced with great challenges, like a devastating flood, thinking creatively and acting thoughtfully can make all the difference. It's not about size or strength, but about quick thinking and a kind heart. So remember Kancil's cleverness. Next time you face a problem, you might just surprise yourself with your own resourcefulness. The clever mouse deer, Kancil, was known throughout the jungle for his quick wit. One sweltering day, a terrible fire started in the forest. The animals panicked, running in all directions, their calls of fear echoing through the smoke-filled air. This is the story of how Kancil, despite his small size, saved the day, teaching us a valuable lesson about thinking outside the box. The fire started accidentally, a careless monkey playing with fire near a dry patch of grass. The flames quickly spread, driven by the strong wind. Elephants trumpeted in terror, trying to stomp out the blaze with their massive feet, but the fire was too fierce. Monkeys screeched, desperately seeking escape routes. Even the mighty tiger looked helpless, the heat pushing him back. The animals were trapped, their homes threatened. Kancil, however, didn't join the frantic rush. He knew brute force wouldn't work against the raging inferno. Instead, he used his smarts. He observed the wind's direction and noticed a river flowing nearby. He realized the fire couldn't cross the water. His first brilliant idea was to lead the animals towards the river. He scurried from one terrified creature to another, whispering instructions and encouraging them to follow him. The elephants, initially doubtful of the tiny creature's plan, trusted his calm demeanor and followed the little mouse deer. Reaching the river, Kancil directed the animals to stand on the opposite bank, creating a safe barrier against the advancing flames. Then, he devised another clever strategy. He ran to a nearby swamp, soaking his fur thoroughly. He then raced back and forth, creating a damp line between the fire and the animals. This acted as a natural fire break, slowing the fire's advance. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the wind changed, and the fire gradually died down, exhausted by the lack of fuel. The animals were safe, their lives saved by Kancil's quick thinking and bravery. Kancil's story isn't just a tale of a brave mouse deer. It's a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming challenges, using our brains can often be more effective than relying on brute strength. It shows that cleverness, observation, and quick thinking can overcome even the fiercest of obstacles, making Kancil a true hero of the jungle. So, next time you face a problem, remember Kancil, and remember to think before you react. You might be surprised at how much you can achieve. The clever Kancil and the angry mountain Kancil, the clever mouse deer, lived at the foot of Mount Barapi, a magnificent but grumpy volcano. Mount Barapi grumbled and groaned constantly, its peak often shrouded in smoky steam. The animals of the forest lived in fear, always worried about the mountain's next outburst. This is the story of how Kancil, with his quick wit, helped everyone escape the mountain's fiery temper. One day, Mount Barapi grumbled louder than usual. The ground trembled, and rocks tumbled down its slopes. The animals panicked. They scattered, desperately seeking safety. But the mountain was too high. Escape seemed impossible. They were trapped, except for Kancil, of course. He had a plan. Firstly, Kancil knew he couldn't rely on brute strength. He was small and couldn't move boulders. Instead, he used his brains. He remembered the old wise owl had spoken of a hidden tunnel behind the waterfall, a secret passage leading to the other side of the mountain. Secondly, Kancil needed to convince the other animals, many of whom were too scared to even listen. He cleverly reassured them, telling them he'd found a way out, a secret route only he knew about. His calm and confidence, even in the face of danger, inspired hope. He promised to lead them to safety if they followed closely. Thirdly, and this was the trickiest part, Kancil had to guide the animals through the dark and twisting tunnel. He kept them calm, reminding them of the sunlight waiting on the other side. He even made up funny stories to distract them from their fear, making the long journey feel a little shorter. Finally, they emerged from the tunnel, blinking in the bright sunlight. They were safe. They looked back at Mount Barapi, still rumbling and smoking, but now they weren't afraid. They had Kancil to thank for their escape. He hadn't defeated the mountain, but he'd outsmarted it, proving that even the smallest creature can be the bravest and cleverest when faced with a big problem. Kancil's story reminds us that bravery isn't always about strength, but about using our wits and helping others. His cleverness and courage saved the day, proving that even a seemingly insurmountable challenge can be overcome with a little help from a friend and a whole lot of clever thinking. And so, Kancil became a legend, the clever mouse deer who outsmarted the angry mountain.